9:10, it's Thursdays, and the board meeting back at its regularly scheduled time. We allotted for the fact that one of our members was busy writing the legislation, so we can come back and talk about it. That's House Majority Leader John Deal. John, good morning. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, good morning. Good to be back.
Tony Messenger is out this week. He's on assignment. Filling in for him is attorney and filmmaker Jay Kanzler. Jay, good to see you.
Good to see you.
And attorney, former chief of staff to Governor Holden, and all-around great gal, and she does look good in a two-piece.
Whoa. Good morning, McGraw.
Jane Duker, ladies and gentlemen, on Big 550 KTRS.
You know what? I'll take that. I don't even care if it's true. I'll take it.
Two-piece, two-pay.
Oh, nice. Yeah. My two-piece, his two-pay. That is good.
All right. Let's get to it. So lots has happened in the last week or so, John Deal, with the school transfer bill, as well as the Normandy School District being dissolved, and also in terms of the parents now upset and suing because of that. Let's first talk about the transfer bill, your thoughts on that, and this whole Normandy School District.
The last week of the General Assembly, we actually passed an education bill for the first time in a couple of years. And I know when we were on the show about a year ago, when we started, it was one of the hot topics on what happens with Normandy, and it's time for the legislature to do something about it. And we actually, I think, passed a bill that it was the right way to do the legislative process. So it was something that was very vetted out over a long period of time. All members of the House and the different factions in the education community were brought into small working groups to try to work through issues to figure out a bill that could pass both the Missouri House and the Missouri Senate. So I think the end result then passed the Missouri Senate 28-3 and received, I think, 90-plus votes in the Missouri House, and now awaits the governor's signature. And what it does principally as it relates to Normandy is put together transfer options for students rather than what's really, I think everyone acknowledges, is the very unattractive option of shipping kids for a half an hour or 45 minutes, paying extra transportation costs, and without really fixing the problems internally. And what this does, it provides a layer of different options. So first, if a school district becomes unaccredited, you accredit buildings within the district and not the entire district as a whole. Okay? Because sometimes in these districts, it's one or two pockets that bring the whole district down.
Sure.
So what we're trying to do is accredit the district as a whole. So the first place you would look is to place children in accredited buildings within the same district. Then there's a private option for non-sectarian schools. That's a local option also, where it's subject to a vote of the local population, okay, that they could send their kids to a non-sectarian private school in lieu of ship them off to another district miles and miles and miles away. And then the third option is doing the transfer with modified tuition so it doesn't bankrupt the school district.
So give some of the money to the student and the accepting school district, not all of it.
Correct. Yeah, there's different percentages on it. I think the base ended up being somewhere between 70 and 90%, where the state, if the receiving school district could demonstrate that the cost was actually more than that the state would be able to make up some of that money.
Yeah.
Then we also did some early childhood for unaccredited school districts, so we could try to get a head start on some of these children and not have the problems. So that's probably enough to tackle. Then we'll tackle what the school board did yesterday.
Right. Okay, now hold on.
Yeah.
Have you heard from Governor Nixon? Because he's sitting on this. Has he signaled one way or the other if he's going to sign or veto this?
During the process, we heard absolutely nothing. So after the conference committee reports, which is the negotiation between the House and the Senate and then the majority and the minority parties, was done, he gave a press conference that indicated that he may not sign something that includes a private option. That's after all the negotiating's done. That's after 6 months of process on it. So I think that's still sitting on his desk. I suspect he's getting a fair amount of pressure from the business community in this region and a fair amount of pressure from people who've been deeply involved in trying to help Normandy to sign that bill. So we'll see what happens.
And I think that's one of the key issues in this, and fascinating to me, is that you have a 135-page bill here addressing an issue that is just devastating, local communities and the kids.
He's good. Go ahead.
Okay, and the governor is expressing reservations because it includes the option of non-sectarian schools, which is just another option to educate kids better than they're being educated, and that's what the governor has reservations about.
All right.
Jane?
And after it's settled.
Well, it
Right.
sounds to me like every time I ask you, have you heard from the governor on this, you say, I haven't heard from him all legislative
Correct.
session.
That's
so
true.
that really could be answer on any bill you guys talked about. Jane, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I agree with accrediting by school. I'm good with that. I think that is important for parents to know which schools are performing, which aren't, and I think broad brushing a district is never a good idea. I have reservations about the private option. We're not fully funding the formula the way it is, and realistically, I think there maybe is one non-sectarian private school that would actually help the Normandy kids. So, if you want to set up a pilot program or something to see if this stuff works, I think I would be a little bit more comfortable with that. I think not if you let a kid transfer and the receiving district takes less money than then the scores of the kids that they take don't count toward that school's overall scores and accreditation, which I think is baloney. I mean, it gives the receiving school no incentive to teach these kids because their scores don't count. I don't think that's cool. That's not school friendly. That's receiving suburban district friendly, and that's not what this ought to be about. So I have an issue with that. Moving within district, I think in theory works, but the district, the schools that are surviving in a district are going to be reticent about taking on more kids because I don't think they get the benefit of not accepting the scores. So I think the current district that these kids in will not have the incentive to take them. I mean, this is my problem. I love the early childhood stuff. We have to start somewhere. I mean, that is, and this is we have a short-term crisis. We have medium-term and long-term problems. I think what's been left is, I think Normandy's got tire tracks on their back. I think there's more we need to be doing for those kids. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't look at the medium and the long term. But those kids, some of them are going to be transferred 3 or 4 times.
So the state school board or the state school commission dissolves the school district before the governor decides what to do with this bill. Explain that to me.
Well, and that's a whole other thing. And I think Normandy, rightfully so, has said, where the heck have you been, Desi? We have been coming to you for years. They took on, what people don't remember is Normandy took on the Riverview kids. And a lot of the issues that came with that, they did the right thing by taking a neighboring district. They were told they were going to have 3 years, to try to assimilate that district and get everything together. They weren't given that. Every time Normandy tries to do something, Desi pulls the rug out, it looks like. Now, Now, is that necessarily a legislative issue? I mean, I'm not sure, but we have a short-term crisis with these kids. Now that they are dissolved, do they get to still benefit from the transfer program that got them to the schools they wanted to go to last year? I'm not sure if that question's been answered. And, and maybe John.
I've got some perspective on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I do think that we have to transition these kids. That, when you take away a school district, and trust me, I represented the special administrative board when the state took over the schools down in the St. Louis City. It is horribly traumatic for a community. And, just like rural areas, which for some reason they don't have the option of this private option, we're just going to do the experiment here in St. Louis. I think that you go toward dismantling a community. There has to be a better answer than transfers. We have to get these districts up and running.
I would weigh in that this is what preserves the community. We're doing everything possible to keep the children close to where they live. It's the status quo that's destroying the community. Number one, you have a community that's deteriorating from socioeconomic conditions, and then you take the children and you ship them half an hour, an hour away
transfer.
by bus every
I
day.
agree with you on that.
So and that's really what's right about this bill.
But you're taking away their district.
Well, it's just what you're saying, is that there's things you like in it.
Right.
There's things you don't like in it.
Right.
That's why it's a good compromise.
Should
the governor should sign.
Should the state have waited to disband the district until the governor decided one way or the other?
I don't know that it necessarily affects what happens to the bill. The bill takes a bigger global issue. I think
that's the problem, right?
I think it had as much St. Louis and Kansas City in mind as it did Normandy. I actually kind of like what the state did with Normandy. If you remember when we talked about this issue 9 months ago, I said that I think when a school goes unaccredited, I think one option that needs to be on the table is everybody associated with needs to get fired.
Right.
And we need to start over. That's kind of what the state board did yesterday, is say, okay, everybody in Normandy, all contracts are terminated, all legacy contracts are terminated, all that. We're starting a new district. We're starting from scratch.
Kind of like GM when they go through bankruptcy. All the contracts are out, and we'll start again.
Hopefully we don't have a bunch of recalled children.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Well, it would have been nice if they had talked to Normandy and tried to do some of these things and help them before it got to this point. That's the issue that I have.
Yeah.
That's Jane Duker. That's John Deal. That is Jay Kanzler. It's the board meeting. We're in session here at the Big 550 KTRS.